Over 82 million prescriptions of levothyroxine or Synthroid are prescribed every single year just in the United States. And chances are, if you are listening to this podcast, Health with Hashimoto's, you might have Hashimoto's, you might have hypothyroidism, and you might be one of the people who are taking a prescription of levothyroxine. So I thought we should chat about what it is, how to take it, to make sure that you're taking it correctly, and just talk about it in general, especially for new listeners who are maybe brand new to Synthroid or levothyroxine. So if we have not met yet, I'm Esther. I am a registered nurse. I'm a holistic health educator. I have 4 boys. I homeschool 2 of them. 2 of them go to a charter school. My husband and I and boys live in Minnesota, where it is cold and dark, but I love it. I've been a nurse for over 20 years now and worked in the emergency department most of my career. And so I can tell you without even, second guessing myself that levothyroxine is one of the most common medications prescribed, because when checking people into the emergency department, we always ask about their med list. And so many people are on levothyroxine. Like my fingers can type it out just by muscle memory. So many people are on it. And I also learned while working in the ER that it is the number one medication that people say, I have to take the brand name Synthroid. I cannot take a generic levothyroxine. And I was like, okay, enough people told me that I didn't look it up. I just said, okay, a lot of people are mentioning this, different states. I worked in multiple different states. Like this is a common thing. It must be real, right? And I never questioned why. I honestly didn't even know a lot about levothyroxine. I knew that it was for hypothyroid, but I couldn't tell you a ton about it. In the emergency department, I don't have to worry about when I give a medication, and I'm not giving people their daily medications. That's what you do when somebody is admitted to the hospital. And in the emergency department, ideally, we are not admitting patients. We're not keeping them for days at a time. Now, of course, emergency departments are way overloaded, and there is some of that, and it's not cool, but that's the broken healthcare system. Today, we're talking about you, your health, and your Synthroid or your levothyroxine. So it is a very common medication. And why do people take it? Let's start with that question. Why do people take Synthroid or levothyroxine? Now, in this episode, I will probably say Synthroid. You might be taking a different version. All levothyroxines are T4. So Synthroid is a T4 medication. As I have said before, if you've listened to the first couple of episodes, like 1 through 10, you got all the basics. And then I repeated a lot of those most common things in episodes like 100 through 110. I tried to give you the basics. So if you've listened to those, you know that your thyroid produces T4. In your body, that T4 is converted to T3, which is what your cells need to use. That's the active form of the thyroid medication. So Synthroid is the T4. And when do you use it? When is it prescribed? It's prescribed when your TSH is out of whack. Now, your TSH is your brain telling your body, I need more thyroid hormone. I need more energy. And so then your thyroid reacts by producing more T4, at least ideally, right? So if your TSH is too high, that means your brain is like hitting the light switch a lot of times. When your power goes off, you hit the light switch a couple times to see if it'll turn back on. Well, that's your TSH. Your light switch is turning back on. Your body is like flipping that light switch up, saying, hey, can I have more energy? Can I have more energy? So ideally, if your TSH is over 3, then your provider is helping you address why your body is not getting enough thyroid hormone. Why is your brain asking for more T4? And at that time, your provider might prescribe some Synthroid or levothyroxine. Now, they might also prescribe a blend. So levothyroxine is just T4. There are other forms. The biggest one is Armor, and that is a blend of T4 with T3. Like I said, your body, your thyroid, produces T4, and then the rest of your body converts that to T3 so that your body, your cells, can use it. So some people, if that conversion is not happening well, then you will be on a blended medication so you get the T4 and the T3. That is up to your provider on how he or she wants to prescribe and how you are responding to your medications. So we talked about Synthroid. it is T4. And why do you have it? It's because usually your TSH is elevated. Sometimes it's if your T4 is too low, like clearly on your labs, we can see that you don't have enough T4. But typically it's because of your TSH. And then how do you know if you need Synthroid or another medication? Again, we're looking at your labs, but also your symptoms. Now, there's a lot of, talk in my circles, the circles that I go through of like, can you just rely on labs? Because I get people asking me like, my labs are kind of normal, but I feel really bad. Or other people will say that they're feeling great and their labs are abnormal. Either way, you have to have this delicate like dance between your labs and your labs and your symptoms. And it is up to your provider to listen to you and to look at the whole picture. We can't just look at the data and we can't just look at the symptoms. You have to look at both. I cannot tell you how many times in my 20 years as a nurse, 20 plus, I've been told, don't just look at the monitor. You have to look at your patient. It's the same thing with labs. You can't just look at your labs. You have to look at the whole picture. If your provider is looking at just the labs, it is time to look for another provider. And there are a lot of options out there. Personally, I quote, go to a virtual nurse practitioner. I love my quote clinic. So telehealth NP is where I go. And there are several different nurse practitioners there. You could just type it in, telehealth NP. I'll try to put the link down in the show notes. And everybody I have seen there looks at both. They will ask me about my labs and I get my labs drawn either at a local clinic or I will order my own labs. And I do have an episode about that. It is episode 39. I explain how to get your own labs, how to order your own labs. This is available in almost all 50 states. I cannot say that it's available in all countries. Everybody regulates a little bit differently. So episode 39 is how to order your own labs. Anyway, I go to my virtual nurse practitioner. They ask about the labs, I upload them or give them all of the data. They ask about my symptoms, and then they put those two together to look at the whole picture. I love this. I did go to a clinic in person at the end of 2024, and I got my labs drawn, and they came back, and my TSH was elevated, and at that point in time, I encountered the broken medical system because the the PA that I had seen, I really loved her. I loved her view of my health. I loved our conversation. She was asking really good questions. She was looking at the whole picture. But when my labs came back elevated, she kicked me off to an endocrinologist. She was not going to prescribe because our healthcare system is broken and everybody is in silos. So she couldn't prescribe my levothyroxine. She had to send me to an endocrinologist. So I called endocrinology through the clinic where I have my insurance. And they're like, oh, we can get you in about 2.5 months. I was like, yeah, no. So I looked at my typical nurse practitioner, telehealthnp.com. I think it's .com. And they could get me in like the next day. So where do you think I went? Of course, I went to the one that's looking at the whole picture. They asked me about my labs. They asked me about my symptoms, and then they prescribed what I needed. I didn't have to wait 2.5 months to go see an endocrinologist. Okay, so there's my little rant for this episode. See somebody who will look at the whole picture, who will look at your labs, who will listen to your symptoms, and who can prescribe. Is that an endocrinologist a lot of times? Yes. Is it always an endocrinologist? Nope, as my story just indicated. So how long does it take to feel better after starting Synthroid? That is the next question. First of all, what kind of symptoms are you going to have? Well, if your TSH is elevated, you're going to have a lot of those hypothyroid symptoms. So you're going to feel really sluggish. That might be physical fatigue. It might be mental fatigue. It might be depression. It might be your metabolism is down. There's a lot of different things that people experience when their thyroid function is down. And again, if your thyroid function is down, your TSH, how much your brain is asking for more thyroid, that's going to be elevated. So if your TSH is elevated, then your thyroid function is down and you're going to want to start on, or maybe your provider will want you to start on some levothyroxine. How long does it take to feel better? Generally, about 6 to 8 weeks, or maybe 4 to 6 weeks. It's in that 1 to 2 month range where we expect to see some changes. And then your provider is going to want you to redo your lab work to see how your body is responding, especially personally. Now, this is not coming from a typical provider that I saw, this is me talking to you with a lot of reading and common sense. We want to know if your T4 from the medication is being converted to T3, right? Of course, because when your body or the medication has T4, then your body is supposed to convert that to T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone, and that's what your body uses. So if you started supplementing or taking a medication that's T4, we want to make sure that it's being used appropriately by your body. So this is the point where you need to have some labs done, including a reverse T3. Not all people are going to order this. In fact, they probably won't if it's a traditional broken healthcare provider. They just don't know, or it's not recommended by their computer system that spits out the lab sets. Maybe they're just going to order the TSH. When I am having this checkup, when I'm looking to see, hey, how is the Synthroid working in my body? I want to see, yes, my TSH. Of course I want to see that. But I also want to see my free T4. I want to see my free T3. I want to see my reverse T3. I want to see all of these because I want to know, if how much T4 I have now in my body, now that I'm supplementing with a medication. I want to see how much T3 I have in my body, how much is being converted, how much of that T4 is being converted. I also really want to see my reverse T3 because the reverse T3 is how much of that T4 was converted to the brake system. Instead of converting it to the gas pedal, the T3, your body can convert the T4 to the brake system, which is, hold on. We need to prioritize rest. We need to prioritize sleep. We need to prioritize time to heal. So I am not going to convert to T3. We don't need more gas. We need to slow down and heal. And that number to me is very significant. That number to me, it says I need to prioritize helping my body heal. So I want to see that reverse T3. Now, every provider is not going to do that. That is up to you to ask for it, and hopefully your provider is on board. So that is going back to the question of how long does it take to feel better? How long until your labs change? Sometimes it can take people up to a year to get their dose dialed in, and then it could even change after that. So you're going to, be on your dose of Synthroid for 1 to 2 months. You're going to get your labs checked, and then they might adjust your Synthroid levels beyond 1 or 2 months, and then check it. Now, there's different things that can play into this. If you have gone through the Holistic Hashimoto's course, then you know different ways that you can support your body so that your body can do what your body is supposed to do, which is heal. And so if you feel like your body is getting stronger, healthier, like your thyroid might be doing better, you might have had a stable Synthroid dose for months or even years, and all of a sudden you feel like you might be over-medicated, and that's because your thyroid is working a little better. That is always the goal. Or maybe you implemented some new therapy. We're going to talk about red light therapy in a couple episodes, and research tells us that when you're using red light therapy, your thyroid can start working better, and people have been able to reduce or even eliminate their Synthroid dose. So I already talked about the symptoms of low thyroid, and then if you're looking at too much thyroid hormone, they would be opposite. So, if I just said you might have too much thyroid if you're taking Synthroid or Levothyroxine and you're healing, well, then you would be feeling things like the number one thing I hear about is heart palpitations. So like your heart fluttering, or it just feels wrong in your chest. That is probably the number one thing I hear. Also, just your heart going too fast. hypothyroid. We talked about depression. Well, hyperthyroid, a lot of times people will feel more anxious and people will feel excessively sweaty. People will have their metabolism go too high. And I know you're thinking, oh, great, Esther, I want that. I want to lose weight. There are healthier ways to lose weight. Giving yourself too much thyroid hormone is not healthy. We do not want that. So let's get your thyroid your thyroid hormone in an ideal range. Okay, so the next question would be, how do you take your levothyroxine or your Synthroid? And a lot of people wonder, can I take it with coffee? So let's answer both of those questions. Number one, you want to take your levothyroxine to mimic what your body would do. And your body releases T4 in the morning, is right before you wake up in that time. And that's actually one of the things that helps your body wake up is the release of different hormones, including T4. And it tells your body, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to wake up. So you want to mimic that. You're going to take your Synthroid right when you wake up. Personally, my husband and I have two different sleep schedules. He works overnight. And so a lot of times when he's not working, he will come to bed really late at night or, really early in the morning. And if I wake up when he comes to bed, I will take it then because it's about an hour or two before I'm going to get up. And so I'll just take my Synthroid at that time. I don't know about you, but my little medication bottle, it has the cap that's reversible. And I think, one side is easier to open, but I reverse it. So it's a little cup at the top of the cap and I pop my Synthroid in there. And that way in the morning, I don't have to remember, did I take it or not? I look at my little cap of the medication bottle. And if it has a little Synthroid in it, then I know I haven't taken it yet. If it's empty, then I know that in the early morning hours when I wasn't quite awake, I took it. So you're going to take it first thing in the morning. You're going to take it with water. You're not going to take it with any other medications. You're not going to take it with any other supplements. You're not going to take it with any caffeine. That includes your coffee. It also includes tea. You're not going to take your Synthroid with caffeine because it changes the absorption rate. It changes your gut. So you take your Synthroid with water. And then comes, I think, the hardest part is you have to wait an hour. Now, for me, I am not a morning person. I put my alarm clock until the very last second. I know exactly how long it takes me to get up, get dressed, get my breakfast, and get the kids out the door to school. I know exactly, down to the minute. And when I started on Synthroid, I was really upset about it because now I couldn't do that anymore. I am a person who needs breakfast. I don't function on no breakfast. And so extending that out was the hardest part for me. And that's when I was brainstorming with my husband. I was like, how can I do this? Because I need to eat breakfast. And he's the one who suggested, why don't you take it when you wake up in the middle of the night when I come to the bed. And so that's worked perfectly. On nights when I sleep solid through the night and I don't wake up, then I do have to wait that hour before breakfast. Now, some pharmacists or some places will tell you that 30 minutes is all you have to wait before you eat. If you look at the research, they have done research on if you take your Synthroid at bedtime, 4 hours after your last intake, or if you take it 30 minutes before eating or 60 minutes before eating in the morning. There is a difference in how your body reacts to those three things. And all of the research that I have looked at about these things indicates that 60 minutes on an empty stomach is the ideal way to take your Synthroid. But also, consistently is the ideal way to take your Synthroid. So if you always take it at bedtime on an empty stomach, it's been 4 hours since your last meal, then you want to make sure that you're always doing it that way and that you're checking your labs to make sure that that is good and you're, keeping the same schedule. Which leads me to, what if you miss a dose? If you miss a dose, you want to get back on your schedule as soon as possible. So let's say you normally take your medication at 6 o'clock in the morning, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, you realize, oh my goodness, I missed my Synthroid. You're going to take it right then. If you realize like at bedtime that you missed it, maybe you're not going to take it then because you're going to take it in the morning. You want to take it as close to when you remember, but also as close to your normal time as possible. It is really important for your body's function that you're taking your Synthroid at the normal time. And I'll answer one more frequently asked question before I sign off. We could definitely continue this conversation over in the school community, skool.com. Come over to the Health with Hashimoto's community and ask your Synthroid questions there because, a lot of people in there have personal experience and I am in there too answering questions. So the last question I will answer about Synthroid or levothyroxine is how long do I need to take this? For a lot of people, it is the rest of their life because if your thyroid is not producing enough thyroid hormone, you need thyroid hormone to function. Every single cell in your body needs the thyroid hormone in order to turn on. It's like the ignition switch. So you need to have the thyroid hormone. If your thyroid is not producing it itself, then you need to supplement with that prescription medication. So to answer that question, you might be taking it for the rest of your life. If you heal, if your thyroid starts doing what your thyroid is supposed to do, then at that time, you can check your labs, you can talk to your provider, you can wean down on your Synthroid and maybe go off of it entirely. But that is only if your thyroid is working because you absolutely need thyroid hormone to function well. Do not take yourself off of your Synthroid. Always look for your labs. Always have a conversation with your provider. You do need thyroid hormone in order to function. So make sure that you are doing things safely. Come over to the school community and let's have a conversation about this. Don't forget that next week we are meeting with the pharmacist over in the school community. The pharmacist who talked about LDN. He can answer all of your questions about LDN live. Make sure to come over to the school community so that you can get in on that opportunity. I will see you over there. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Please discuss any concerns and plans with your trusted healthcare professional. If you found this episode helpful, will you please share it with a friend? I'll see you next week on the Health with Hashimoto's podcast.